All right, so today we're talking about progression. Everyone knows you need to continue to progress in some way, shape, or form to continue to build muscle, but there are about 100 different ways to do progressive overload. So today I'm going to show you just 2 ways that cover pretty much every single movement in any program you could write so that you can grow for as long as possible, as easily as possible. Now, the main thing you need to understand to make this happen is what your signals are and what your levers are. So signals are our best indicators of performance. If your goal is to increase your bench, for example, then your top set weight for that bench session is probably your best signal in this example. Now, muscle growth is a little bit more abstract. It's not just how much weight you're lifting. To track this, what I like to use is my top set performance, which is going to be my weight for reps or reps for a certain weight at whatever intensity it is. Then your top set in this situation is usually going to be your first set after your warm-ups. Now your levers. These are what you can adjust, the variables you can adjust in response to your signals. So in training, we can adjust the number of sets, we can adjust the reps, the weight, or the intensity pretty much. Intensity for this goal is normally measured in RIR or reps in reserve. Now, I don't use the same RIR for every set in a given week. What I prefer to do is, like I said, use our top set and progress the top set intensity from 2 to 3, 1 to 2, and then 1 and 0 as the weeks go on. What this will end up doing is giving us more total sets at failure, 0, or 1 rep in reserve as the program goes on, and I'll show you guys how that pretty much takes care of itself in just a second. Real quick, you need a program first before you can apply progression methods to your training. Click the link in the description to get the program designer that I made for free. Okay, so the first method we're going to get into is called rep match. This is going to be ideal for these larger muscle group isolations or your compounds. So these compounds or larger muscle isolations, these usually are done with a lot more weight than your small muscle isolations, obviously. But they recover slower and usually can't be hit as often. And then your smaller muscle isolation movements, these are usually going to be done with lighter weight, done for more reps, and then these can usually handle more frequency or volume because they recover faster. Okay, so rep match, week 1. You're going to warm up and hit your top set right here, and this is going to be your baseline that you're going to use for the rest of the program for this movement. So in this example, say our first set of the program for this movement, we hit 100 pounds for 10 reps at 2 reps in reserve. The rest of your sets, you're normally going to keep the same weight and then keep the intensity similar or a little bit higher. This is going to give you, what's going to happen when you actually do this is it's going to give you a rep drop off. And then I'll only end up decreasing the weight if I feel like the rep drop off is going to put me in too low of a rep range. And then so once you hit this first week, you're going to aim for you're going to add some weight, usually 5 to 10 pounds. The weight jump is going to depend on, one, the movement. Obviously, if it's a smaller isolation movement, it's going to be tough to add weight. We'll go over how to progress those in a second. The weight jump mostly depends on how difficult the top set was the week before. So if it's week 1 and the top set really wasn't close to killing you, you can probably add more weight. But then as you go through the program, the top set weight jumps are going to decrease. So it's week 2, we're now going to add our weight and we're going to aim for the same amount of reps. So in this example, we'll do 110 and we'll aim for 10 reps. This does a couple things. First, with all other variables equal, we're at least going to increase the weight. Now, while strength doesn't always equal size, increases in weight for reps or reps for weight with consistent form over time usually means that you grew. For the sets after your top set, I'm still going to aim to beat my rep total for the last week. But if I don't get them, I don't really stress out about it or update my levers based on that signal, because with these latter sets, there's going to be a lot of noise. As you improve your top sets and your intensity increases throughout the program, there's going to be way too many reasons for fluctuations to occur on these latter sets for you to update your levers or use your pull your levers based on that information. So as your weight goes up, your fatigue is going to increase. As your weight goes up for especially more sets, your fatigue is going to increase exponentially. It's not going to be linear. So it's unlikely they're going to be able to hit the exact same rep totals as you progress from week to week. Now, this is the most important thing you need to understand to make sure that you progress for a long time and you don't stall after one program. So your progression needs to be signal driven, but effort controlled. Like I mentioned earlier, we just did this in week 1. Now in week 2, I want to up the weight and then I want to aim for the same reps. I also want to progress my intensity. So in this first week, we did 2 or 3. Now I want to hit 1 or 2 in this next week. So I take my 110, I hit 10 reps and perfect, I grew. Reps remain constant. I increased weight and my intensity wasn't failing. That's totally fine. Now, say I'm feeling strong and I hit 11 or even 12, staying in the 1 to 2 range here. That's perfectly fine also. reps are increasing, weight's increasing, my intensity is where it needs to be, we're totally good. Now, say I load 110 up on whatever exercise this is, and I'm at 9, and I know that if I do one more rep, I'm going to fail. So I have about 1 rep left in the tank. I'm just going to sit here for now at this point in the program. If you train presses or hinges or squats to failure week after week, that's just not sustainable. So much less of an issue right now, or much less of an issue with our smaller muscle groups, which we're going to get into right now. Real quick, one more time, you need a program if you're going to apply these progression methods to anything, to your training. So click the link in the description to get access to my program designer for free. Okay, for our smaller muscle group isolation movements, I usually use top set double progression. These are just movements where adding weight every single week just isn't going to happen normally. Here I basically take a weight. In this example, I just laid out like 50 pounds on like something like an easy bar curl or something like that. And then I'll go for rep progressions on my top sets each week until I get to the top end of a range, or I just plateau. And then I'll just add 5 pounds or something and do it again. Now this can happen within a program. Normally what happens with me though is I will just run rep progressions through a program. And then the next program, if I use the same movement again in it, I'll just up the weight and then start over. Unlike normal double progression, I don't wait for every single set for the movement to hit the top end of the rep range before I add weight and start over. Because like I said, I think the best signal or indicator of muscle growth is going to be that top set performance. So I just use that. And then yeah, the same intensity gates do exist here too, except you can go a little bit harder on a lot of these smaller muscle isolation groups just because they can take a lot more. Okay, so yeah, we just basically went over top set rep match and top set double progression. We have our inputs, our training, and then we have our outputs, what actually happens. And then how are we going to measure what actually happens? That's where our signals come in, like we just talked about, for our goal that we're talking about in this video, which is muscle growth. I like to use the top set performance. And then we just went over 2 different methods that prefer to play with 2 different levers. So we went over the first one that likes to use weight for reps as our lever that we adjust. That's our rep match. And then our second one, double progression, prefers to pull our rep lever more often. And then both of those methods use the same intensity controls to make sure we don't burn out way too early. Like I mentioned, the smaller muscle group double progression method, you can usually go harder for longer and not have as many issues. But there's one more lever we haven't talked about yet, and that is sets. So this is pretty simple to figure out. I would just start at 2 or 3 per movement. And then say you did 3 sets of a certain target on day 1. So say you did like 1 bicep movement for 3 sets, that'd be 3 total sets. If you did like 2 chest movements, 4 sets each, that'd be 8 sets. You do a certain number of sets on day 1, and then that target muscle recovered more than a day before the next time you're supposed to train them. I would add a set to that session the next week. If you recover the day before, for example, not multiple days before, I would then hold your sets because you're still adding weight or reps depending on the progression style. And then your recovery needs could change. So I wouldn't jump the gun. And now you have some tools that you can use to make gains for as long as possible. If you need to create a program to use these methods with, check out this video. Again, if you want to lay it out in the free program designer that I made, the link to that is in the description.